showtime. We'll talk about that.
Open that. Find out where it is. For more information.
I'm trying to get there.
That's the main camera right here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Don't look at that.
Welcome to Folk Convene for Justice. Today we have Brother Bruce Broussard, which I'm very happy to have him today, and Brother Danny Bell, which is here today to speak about issues that Bruce Broussard is going to go over with him. And I'm looking forward to all this to take place. So without any further ado, I just want to say all of you people out there in TV land, okay, in God Almighty we trust, and I love you, and God Almighty loves you, and without any hesitation, let's take it, Brother Broussard.
Right. Cecil, again, I want to thank you very, very much for giving us the opportunity to be here, and the people would like to thank you for making sure you got this program.
Amen.
Because I tell you, I've talked to people out there in the community, and they really like the show. You bring them information that they can't get anywhere else.
Amen.
Even from those fake newspapers. That
Right.
But I tell you what we have done as a result of that, in all due respect, some of the news stories, both of those papers, the Scanner and the Observer, have changed as a result of this.
Amen. I'm
You know what
happy
I'm
to
saying?
hear that. Yes.
Because in all due respect, newsprint is kind of an old deal nowadays. If you don't have that, if you're not in that iPhone stuff or whatever, or being able to visually see it,
Oh, yeah.
right here, you just don't get it. So I want to thank you from the community standpoint. Thank you very much for being here.
Well, you're very welcome.
Appreciate that very much.
Because
Okay.
YouTube is everywhere.
That's
and,
right.
And you can hear our show for
Yes.
today and
Yes.
for now.
Forever.
And forever. And I
Forever.
love that.
Forever. So we appreciate that very much, Cecil.
Okay.
And like you said, today we got a gentleman here, and Danny Bell, and I've known Danny for years, if you will. In fact, we fall off the same tree when it comes to communication.
Amen.
He's very, very much involved. He's been involved.
Amen.
In all due respect, he kind of like, to a certain degree, he's had a past, but the kind of guy he was, he didn't just sit back and drive about it. He just get out there and start doing something about it.
All right.
I mean,
Well,
he's
I
been in
love it.
some of those areas, like for instance, when I was published in the Observer newspaper, Danny was there. He was out there selling ads, and
Oh,
he
that's great.
worked with my son on some stuff, and I mean, he's worked with a lot of folks, and he knows a lot of the history here.
Okay,
So
what I
we're
want
gonna
to
take
do.
advantage of this.
Oh, great. I just wanted to make sure that it was on the air, because what was
Good.
happening that for a second it wasn't on the air.
It wasn't on there after that? Okay.
Well, it's on now. But
It's
it
on now?
wasn't
Okay.
There on the air now.
Okay, good.
So
Okay.
please, without me interrupting,
Okay,
both
okay.
of you, please let them have it.
Oh,
like I
I'd
said,
like
you're
to say
welcome.
thank you too.
You're very welcome.
Okay, good.
Thank you, Brother Dan.
Well, what we're going to do, in all due respect, you'd be more than glad, by the way, Cecil, if you'd like. You can just intervene anytime you want to. We're going to take advantage of this opportunity. This gentleman that goes around, he knows anybody and everybody.
Okay.
If anybody knows the community
Yes.
and knows the history of this community, it's a Danny Bell.
Amen.
In all due respect.
Yes.
And we
Yes.
need to know about that, because, as you know, there's an issue out here right now when you hear words like gentrification and i.e. the community don't exist and things of that nature. It's important that one knows their history.
Amen.
That it does exist, and it still exists.
Yes.
And in fact, Danny, I'm sure, is very familiar with that. I'm sure he remembers the time when, in fact, I was at the Observer, and a lot of community folks got together, and we put a fence around the area. Remember that? We put a new district, so to speak, to get the Margaret Carters of the world. Remember that? Because beforehand, that district was not there. Initially, it was just northeast Portland, where all the blacks live.
Right.
But you didn't know where it was.
Right.
So just to make sure that we made an effort at the Observer, and we lobbied. In fact, we went down to Salem several times over. Other folks like Ronnie, and we went down and we lobbied. There were some of the folks that didn't like that idea. In all due respect, the Kaforis didn't like it. The Cats didn't like it. They didn't like the idea of putting a fence around an area where maybe a majority of blacks would live in.
Amen.
Not all blacks, but a majority in the district. So the chances of a person winning, if you will, and I want Danny to respond to that, but it's a very significant piece because folks need to know this out in the land. We still have a community.
Yes.
We have a community, and Margaret Carter won that first piece, but the first person who won out of that deal was a guy by the name of Ed Leake. His name was Ed Leake, and he won. And then once we settled out the dust, because everybody wanted to get involved in the deal, and in all due respect, it was the women, the white women that actually brought Margaret to the table.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? To counter us. We was trying to, in all due respect, we were trying to get, I'll be right up front with you, trying to get a male. Because too often it was Harold Williams.
Right.
Harold, Bang Bang Walker, and I think Chad, several of them, we'd kind of gotten together, but then they kind of did a woo on him. Remember that with Harold?
Don't start.
About Mount Oliver. Remember that one? Not Mount Oliver. It was Mount Oliver.
I was on his
with John.
campaign. I worked with his campaign.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
But the bottom,
wholeheartedly.
but the bottom line is that we still have a community,
Right.
Yes.
but we
yes.
got to fight to keep it.
Yeah,
And so
absolutely.
we need to educate folks,
Yes.
besides just black folks, white folks,
Yes,
that
absolutely,
we do
yes.
have a community here.
Absolutely,
And
yes.
there are services that are
Yes.
still available in that community.
Yes.
And a lot of those services are not being served, if you will, are being responded to the black community.
That's
okay,
true. That's very
so we
true.
need to know that. And then now that we've got we got a newly elected mayor, and in all due respect, he doesn't come from this area. Danny, in fact, Danny worked on the campaign, and we're going to talk a little bit about that too.
Please do.
But,
yes.
but it's very, very important. We're
Yes.
talking about the housing aspect of it. We're talking about people losing their homes. We're talking about new taxes. We're talking about bonds. And every time you turn around, you know, it's constantly taking it apart. But those so-called laws and rules and regs are still involved in that district.
Right.
Meaning that without that district, the state of Oregon can't get a certain amount of monies.
Absolutely. Yes.
Because all the money comes back in many ways. Every state in the union has a Northeast Portland.
Right.
Right.
You got me? And so, but when the money comes back, a lot of times, let's say $1,000 come back, we might get 50, and the other $950 goes out of the areas. When you talk about the rehab and all this, that, and the other. But the fact of the matter is, we got to fight to keep this community in place.
Okay.
Very, very, very important. So I just wanted to throw that out because that's something that we need to know about that piece. But let's just go on and start. The other reason why I've got Danny here today is that too often you hear a lot of these rumors about, well, black men and this, they're looking for black leaders and we're the fathers and we're deadbeat fathers and this, that, and the other. But then our youth are just coming right behind us and they're going to be fathers too at some point in time. There's always this push, if you will, it's mother first and then the male. But we got to spend a little bit more time to make sure we put that black male involved in the process.
Absolutely,
It
yes.
takes two people to
Very
tango.
important. Yes. Yes.
You know what I'm
yes.
saying? So the thing I would like for Danny to kind of maybe to talk about is our men, our young men.
Okay, well,
who are
that's
coming
something
up.
I'm
Let's get down there. Come on,
Very
Danny.
sensitive about.
Before you do that, though, share with the public about a little bit about your background and who
Okay.
you are.
Well, I was born and raised in Portland, Oregon. In fact, I grew up across the street from this facility right here. My parents came here in the 1940s, and we were railroad people. My great aunt and great uncle came here in 1939
Wow.
from Texas, on
Texas.
that side of the family.
What part of Texas?
College Station,
College
which is now College Station used to be Bryant, Texas. Now,
That's not near Cut and Shoe, is it?
don't get me started. I don't know. All I know is that Texas A&M is near there.
Okay, all right.
And then on my mother's side, her family's from Mississippi,
Okay.
and they were all high achievers. I had one uncle that was a mathematical genius that corrected textbooks. My mother was a brilliant money manager and very involved with such people as Mrs. Triplett, what's his name? Pauline Bradford, all those people.
Plummer,
Mrs. Gary, Mr.
Gary.
Plummer.
Yes, I
You know, very much involved with NAACP, stuff like that. So I come from a background of high achievers. We've been here, I've been here 67 years. My story is kind of like an English novel. They had great expectations of me as a kid. Even though I had a checkered past, I went to McLaren 4 times. At that time, You could go to McLaren for family problems. You go to McLaren for skipping school. And it wasn't a penal institution as it's become.
Right.
It was much more like a boarding school or a military school.
Right.
And so I was the only person on this thing called High Q. They have High Five. I was captain of the football team. I worked for Eugene McCarthy as a 18-year-old. They took me all across country down to Southern California.
When you was in McLaren aspect?
After I got out.
You got out?
Okay, the sequence goes, I got in trouble with Jeff. I went to McLaren. I got out. I realized Jeff was not the social environment for me. I went to Washington. I was much more well received there. They took me under their arm, under their wings, and that led to the things I accomplished in high school, president of the general council, also captain of the football team. I made city football, XYZ.
Don't hit on the table. Anyway.
And then after I finished high school, I went to
and what
Western Oregon.
What high school you were?
Washington.
Washington, okay.
Yeah, Washington.
Okay.
Washington High School. I'm proud to say, what's his name? Linus Pauling went there.
Okay.
So then I went to college. I transferred from a teacher's college because the curriculum was not really structured for what I wanted to do. I wanted to be an English professor. There were elementary and secondary education. And so I transferred to the University of Oregon. And then I started having mental health issues that lasted from the time I was 19 till my mid-30s. So, and that's basically it in a nutshell. All through the course of that, I was active in some form of politics, if not working for a major politician like Eugene McCarthy. I worked for a number of local politicians. Who's the black guy in City Hall for so long?
Dick Bogle?
Dick Bogle. I worked on his campaign, putting out signs. I worked for Wheeler's campaign.
Yeah, let's talk about Wheeler for a minute. What do you think? You worked for him hard, right?
Wheeler, to me, has some of the same attributes of most politicians.
That's our present mayor, right?
Yeah, I know. He caters to his base.
Caters to his base.
He caters to his base.
What does that mean?
It means that his base is women, basically in the gay and lesbian community. That's where his operation emanated out of, were aspects of catering to the GLBT community. What I had to say wasn't well received because my position is black men should be able to be heads of their households. Through the female worldview, or let me quote, what's his name, C.J. Robinson, who was the coordinator for the Black Male Achievement, astounded me when he said that what's wrong with black men capitulating to the female worldview. Essentially what C.J. told me that androgyny trumps sexual identity, and the only people allowed to have a sexual identity are women. In order to accommodate this feminist worldview, men have to jettison our traditional sexual identity, which is basically in the Western culture of
now you talking about black men or white men?
I'm breaking it down now.
Okay, all right.
Western civilization, you have to protect and to provide. Same thing in Africa. If you ever read Things Fall Apart or Poison One Bible, men protect and provide. C.J. told me that that's not a necessary component of being a man. I was astounded and baffled. Then there's the other guy, Maurice Henderson, told me I was just one of many. Regardless of what my accomplishment, my contributions to the city, I was just another sucker out of 10,000 people. He told me to my face, there's 10,000 people doing what you do, Danny. I'm gonna ask you, Henderson, how many people have went to Washington, D.C. and lobbied on their own money with congressmen for the black, to prevent violence and to promote black economics in the black household?
You've done that?
Yeah, that's what I did with my own money.
Interesting.
So he's telling me that don't matter. 10,000 people do that. Did you do it? Okay.
But how does Wheeler fit in? You still talking
okay,
about
Wheeler uses the same model that Trump uses. They pander to their base. He's talking all this economics and whoop-de-whoop-de-whoop about black men. And so I have not been able to sit down either with Earl Blumenauer or Ted Wheeler face to face and have a discussion about black masculinity.
But you were working for him. What's the deal?
Why don't you ask him?
Huh?
I'm trying to ask him. Why don't you ask him?
But you were actually.
I've asked him face to
How long
face.
did you work on the campaign?
I worked from the campaign from its very inception. I brought in people who were hip hop artists. Dr. Cynthia Harris, who's the principal at
Cynthia.
Jeff.
Yeah, no Cynthia.
I did door knocking. I did telephone banking. I did the whole 9 yards because, as many of you know, I'm a trained professional grassroots organizer. And I was trained by one of the best, Acorn, which was the largest grassroots organization on the planet. When we used to go back to Chicago or Detroit, there were literally people from all over the planet. India, Colombia, England, France, my bad, England or France. I met people from all over the world working for Acorn, and I took photos. We actually shut down a bank by nonviolent protests. And when our leader, who incidentally was a woman, said, "Be quiet," we had babies and all in a bank that was no more square footage than right here, and it was wall-to-wall people. You could hear the pin drop. So that's my background in nonviolent protests.
Okay.
And I've also worked closely at one time with the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, which I was really surprised how many people aren't familiar with. Southern Christian Leadership Conference was the organization that Martin Luther King and his colleagues established that did some of the most profound civil rights work in the United States, and it still is active to this day.
Okay. Now again, let's get back down to the Wheeler aspect of it. Now you were working for this guy, and you basically went out and recruited the Cynthia Harrises of the world and other black folks, and he met with them.
No, he didn't meet with any, as far as I know, because he had an inner circle. And he has an inner circle, I guess, of these guys born in the 1980s, late 70s. And like any person who operates, those are the people he trusts. Those are the people that, obviously, if this guy's your chief of staff, you're going to trust the chief of staff before you trust the outsider. Especially an outsider that makes your base uncomfortable. The only thing I got from him is that my perceptions were interesting as far as following the economics implications of what it means to have a feminist defining what black men are. And I read all over the place, bell hooks, Patricia Collins Hills, Gloria Steinem, women's literature. I took all this stuff in college before there was even a women's studies.
You're sort of sharing him that at the same time.
Yeah. So the threat appears to be that if all men are assumed to be uncouth bores who take and exploit women, and that's a given. All you have to do is pick up the latest copy of PDX Queer, and they'll tell you straight out the front page article, where are all the butches? And where she clearly says heterosexual normative males are the enemy.
Interesting. Well, now check this out. Now it's my understanding that he's got two chiefs of staff.
I didn't know that.
I mean, yeah, he's got two chiefs of staff, one black, one white. And in all due respect, I tried contacting this person, but he never would return his calls. And in fact, he got in trouble initially here in Portland because he did something in regards to a white female, you know, from the standpoint of he was, she didn't like the job or something, and it was some sexist thing came out or whatever. But my point, you don't see the guy. I thought maybe because he'd hired this black on his staff as a chief of staff, that was going to be his liaison to the black community. Now, in all due respect, I don't know who he is.
Well, I know 3 or 4 of my guys.
Cecil, have you ever interviewed a black chief of staff from Wheeler's office?
No, I haven't.
You haven't?
No,
Okay,
I haven't,
okay.
no.
Now you don't know that? You don't know about this guy?
I met, that's what I'm talking about. Morris Henderson is the black chief of staff I talked to that was very dismissive of me. He told me,
Wait a minute.
there are 10,000 people doing what
Now,
you're
wait a
doing.
minute.
That's
Is he-
Maurice Henderson.
now, wait a
That's his
minute.
black chief of
But he's a
staff.
black man?
Right.
He's from Portland.
No, I doubt it.
He
No,
went to school here.
I have no clue. I have had secondhand information. All I know, he's supposed to be a brilliant mind. That's all I know.
Yeah. I understand he worked on the Clinton's campaign. I mean, who was the guy that was running for vice president or something?
Biden.
Yeah, no, not him. It was the other guy that ran ran with him as her vice president.
Oh, okay.
This other guy, but anyway, but the bottom line is that supposedly he had all this background and whatever, but he never responded. You know, I guess I'm gonna throw this out on the table. Let me, you know, a lot of times we as citizens, as voters, you know what I mean, we tend to forget the position that we're in when we elect someone. You know, we are the employers.
We're the Republic.
employees.
We are the Republic.
Right? You right? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
For some strange reason, we don't understand it. A lot of us don't understand. You know what I'm coming from?
Yes, I do.
And then on the other side, they feel they are the ones in charge of everything. I'm gonna tell you everything you're supposed to do, and they don't understand. No. You are an employee.
Right.
And well, we got issues out there,
And we're trying
and
to
your job
resolve
once you
issues.
get elected, you don't squabble about nothing. Just get the job done.
Right.
And if you can't, you got to step aside, right? But you make a good point about Mr. Wheeler early on when he in the campaign trail. I was following him initially. I was just tracking the deal for the shows aspect of it.
Yeah.
But I saw the guy was lacking in terms of getting out and reaching out to, as you say, mail. I had my cover on, and I remember the first time I met him up here in Southeast Portland, and there were a lot of folks that were there.
Right.
I had my military on, and only black man there. He didn't reach out or nothing, didn't say nothing, didn't hey no hi. And in fact, he made a comment about the fact it wasn't about senior citizens. He didn't relate to senior citizens at all.
Yeah,
he
that's sad.
didn't relate to military at all. And I saw this guy, and he didn't relate to black folks straight up.
Right.
I mean, like he was afraid of you. Like he didn't even have to deal with you whatsoever. Well, naturally, it got me to the point. I said, "Well, I think I need to run for mayor because you can't talk to the media to a certain degree, you know, because it's all fake news in many ways, especially when it comes to black folks.
Well,
We
it's
relate.
infotainment.
Yes,
it's infotainment.
yes.
And people have to understand, when you understand how marketing money
Oh
works,
yes.
it's what the consumer wants.
Yes. It's
In
the ad.
in
It's selling
in the
ads.
days of old, it was called
Yes,
yellow
yes,
journalism
yes.
or sensationalist journalism.
Right.
To be an objective journalist is something like CBS or
Yes.
the New York Times
Yes.
or the Guardian out of
Right,
London does.
right.
But the popular appetite follow the money.
Yeah, right.
So, like Fox News, what people are accustomed to is having their already preconceived notions reaffirmed by various places in the media.
Right,
so
right,
if you're conservative, you watch Fox News.
Right.
If you on the middle of the road, you watch CNN. If you're radical, you watch some of the cable shows that are left leaning.
Now these are legit. You think that's hard nosed?
Well, it's the prism. It's the prism.
Okay.
But
what about
objective? First of all, there's no such thing as true objective journalism.
Okay.
But scholastic journalism that's based on what you're taught in school about journalism, about distancing yourself emotionally from the subject you're writing about, that is not part of the popular appetite.
Okay.
People want to be reaffirmed about perceptions and ideas they already have.
Okay.
And that's where they go. If you listen to talk shows, they're real sharp. You listen to KXL, I've talked to some of the general managers, they don't necessarily buy into what Lars Larson was saying, but they like the numbers Lars Larson is generating.
But he communicates though.
Yeah, he's a
I
communicator.
mean, he communicates. But then I think
But
about.
that's the appetite of the
what,
public
but
wants
what
to hear
about
that.
what about black news?
Okay.
What about black newspapers? I mean, do they fit in the Now I do know we fit in the marketplace because we got a viewing audience
Right.
aspect of it. But in all due respect, that's supposed to be another education medium. You know what I'm saying? And my point is that if you said, well, you're a black newspaper, you are supposed to be communicating and articulating the issues of black folk to educate the masses of white folks as to how they think. Now, why are we getting that or not? What's the deal? Maybe I went down. I came down the wrong truck or something.
No.
Yeah, it's horrible. Yeah.
I was in the black newspaper business for about 20 years.
So what's your
Bernie
definition?
Foster hired me just basically sight unseen. I ran with it till roughly 2011, 2012.
So what do you think about? No, don't get me wrong. He's got to eat, and
we talked about
his newspaper. That he got to eat too. But the fact of it is, does black newspapers benefit black folks? And is it getting out what it's supposed to do?
Right.
Educate black folks, and then educate white folks about black folks. There's
Absolutely.
nothing negative about that.
To a degree.
To a degree. Now,
To a degree.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
To a degree.
To a degree, well, if you open up, say, the most recent scanner, They have a community page. They do speak on some salient things around education on occasion, or children's issues. So
Yeah, but a lot of that stuff,
they
a lot of that stuff,
provide.
but you Google it. You know, you Google that stuff.
but
It's nothing
they
fresh.
give it to you. They give it to you like what we call in the business. It's an aggregate. Their information is in one place, aggregated for you, instead of you having to look it up yourself.
Yeah, but what about the meat and potatoes issue? Who shot John? What
Well,
about the
it's
kids?
just, it's
that
just
kind
like
of stuff.
an analysis of the black middle class. You know,
we don't even see those.
Do black civil servants actually provide services that are of real interest to blacks
No.
in general?
You know.
And this is one question I want to ask you.
Well, I mean,
Now, you remember the Tuskegee Airmen,
Yeah,
right?
oh, yeah, I remember those.
Right.
I remember those
Right.
guys.
And
Yeah, I remember those
you
guys.
probably were familiar with the Tuskegee S.D. program they had for felons, where they gave people STDs.
I heard that. Yes, I
That
saw
was
that.
coincided roughly about the time of the Tuskegee Airmen.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on one hand, we want to tout all this integrity and the greatness
Yeah,
of our
right,
airmen.
right.
Where were they there when they were giving these guys these diseases that they had no intentions of curing them? You see what I mean? That's kind of the dilemma
Well,
of
we
the
always-
black newspaper.
Black newspapers.
You know, they provide information, both the Scanner and the Observer, I've been across country, that you're not going to get in mainstream or white media. Some of it is kind of, shall we say, distilled and watered down. There's still things that we wouldn't find out.
Wow. Wow.
But it is compromised by the dollar bill.
Well, you know, the reason why when you say that dollar bill, this is an interesting game about it. Think about it. When we got into the affirmative action arena,
Right.
Right.
i.e. for black folks,
Right.
you know what I mean? It was just black folks.
Right.
Then we added more folks to the same list
Well, women, for one.
that were not black though.
Right.
Right, that's very true.
But
yeah.
but look at the amount of dollars that they've always identified with black folks in the affirmative action deal. With that kind of money, everybody should be living in $400,000 houses.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Guaranteed.
so where did the money go? And my point is, I guess the point I'm making from a journalism standpoint, that's what the black newspaper should be doing, educating where to go.
Right.
And who got the money?
Right.
And how do I get the money?
Right.
I mean, I'm just saying, and I'm not trying to be negative about it.
Right, right. I hear what you're saying. As a business
right,
model,
but-
as a conduit for money,
Right, but we're
that the
getting
money
blamed.
should flow through like
Right,
that.
but we're getting blamed, if you will, of misusing all the money.
Right, right. And
I mean,
never
a good
got
example
to
was
put a
the
hand
World
on
War
it.
But who's blaming you? Other black people.
That's what I'm
They're
saying.
the first ones.
But that's the point I'm making. So to name it again, who signed the checks?
Right, absolutely.
Who
Yeah, all
signed the
time.
checks? Who
Yeah.
signed the contract aspect
Was it
of
the
it?
lobster or the crab?
And then at the same time, you said the people who are receiving the monies, they know that in fact that they're doing it for a purpose, because hey, they're not going to sign the paper over here. You know, like for instance, they're not going to come up to me and say, Bruce, why don't you start another newspaper?
Right, right.
See, because that's another issue. We can talk about that point.
Well, we can.
But the journalism aspect is very, very important. That's why it's so important. Like Cecil has this show. He does poor folks and a lot of black folks. He's focusing on folks who are down at the ladder,
Right.
down there. And the bottom line is that they need that piece of paper, if you will. If they were able to pick up a newspaper, a Scanner, Observer, and it says to them, okay, fine, if you want to feed your family, you know what I mean. This is how you can feed your family on this kind of a budget.
Absolutely.
As opposed to this budget, as opposed to going out and eating at the fast foods and getting obese and all that other good stuff.
Yeah.
Niggas. We need those bread and butter types of information stuff. Now the folks who think they're middle class, they're basically a paycheck from going broke.
Right. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
one-
Right back to Popo.
Yeah,
Within
amen.
6
Exactly
months,
what it is.
generally
Yeah.
speaking.
You understand what I'm saying? So now today, it's very, very important. You know what I mean? I even think about the election aspect of it. There's the big push, like from a media standpoint, because everybody's forced to look at CNN and Fox and this, that, and the other, but it don't relate to the folks trying to make a living locally.
No, it doesn't.
You got me?
Not at all.
I mean, the decisions over there are already made on the national deal. I don't get caught up in the whole issue of the presidential election. I'm not at that table. If I was at that
Yeah,
table, it'd be a
yeah,
different
yeah.
ballgame.
Yeah,
But I'm not at that table. I don't get shot at over there.
Yeah.
But I'm here at this table.
Right.
So that's why it's important that I do my show, that I hopefully Cecil does a show aspect
Right.
of it, and we want to talk about bread and butter issues. And then, but then still, we're supposed to be activists and loudmouths, and we're attacking. No, the bottom line is that I recognize very strongly that I spent X number of years in the Marine Corps,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
this is my country.
Right.
I
Yes,
don't,
it is.
I don't
Yes,
make
it
it
is.
no
Well, we were
exception.
discussing the whole idea
Yes.
of being an American.
Yes, he said so. So
when
I,
we get
I-
so fixated that I'm from Eastern
Yes, yes,
Europe
yes,
or I'm
yes.
from Nigeria
Yes.
or I'm from Asia, Americans, we have our own culture.
yeah,
The world follows American culture now.
Right,
Hip hop,
right.
jazz,
Yes, yeah,
modern
yeah,
dance,
right.
all those are American manifestations.
right.
Some of the greatest literature of the last 100 years
but what is our
has come out of
but
America.
what is our definition of that? But the way they identify us is as minorities.
Time
See,
out.
The definition of minority is always less than.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
See, I'd rather be just
Yeah.
kind of like, so, remember they made that point about it takes a village to make a child?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Back in the old days in a segregated arena, we were all in the same village.
Right.
And you know, we survived. We ate too.
Yes, you did.
Now today we opened up the barriers. You got me? No fence around it, right?
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden everybody's starving. See?
Yeah, broke buster can't be trusted. That kind of
That's it. I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's very important that these two newspapers, both the Scanner and the Observer, understand what we're talking about here.
Right.
Because we need their help. We need their help, and they are black.
Well, they're the
folks that
voice
sit there.
of our community.
Yeah. No. They're not no voice. No, the voice is here.
Well, this part of the voice.
Cecil is the voice. I'm the
Amen.
voice,
Amen.
and you've been the
But-
voice. But my point is, I can't give them the
Yeah,
go ahead no
right,
more. The
Right.
only voice I want them to understand is that I want them to recognize they're black folks and they got a job to do.
Absolutely.
They said they're the black newspapers.
Right.
If you're the black newspaper, I'm part of that deal.
Absolutely.
And you
Yes,
don't fit
yes,
the
yes.
marketplace with me.
Right.
See, so my point is that, hey, listen to what's going on here. Just start doing the education. Now I do recognize now. They got to eat too.
Yes.
And somebody have to pay for the subscription.
Right.
Somebody have to advertise.
Yeah.
Now that's an area that's lacking, if you will. But I think if they had more information on black folks in the paper, people would buy it. Because right now it's just a throwaway. It's just kind of a rag.
Well, I'm telling
It's just
you,
sitting up there for free.
I can tell you, I did the research years ago. In Portland, way more white people read black newspapers
I know
than
that.
black people.
But see, they complain.
But can I finish my
Yeah,
thought?
go on.
Part of this, what you're talking about, Bruce, is like the Jacob and Esau relationship. And I'm a firm believer. If you let somebody else come and define you
Right.
and take your inheritance,
Right.
that's on you.
Yeah, that's right.
You understand?
That's right.
Because you can't let somebody else, we have like Martin Luther King said, we have a document that's a promissory note.
Yes.
And it's incumbent upon us to make the other guy
I
keep
agree.
him honest.
I agree with you.
Whining, complaining.
I agree.
While he's sitting up in the hill like we used to do
agree.
in Acorn,
I agree.
while all the rich guys, well, they're playing poker, drinking the best beer and the finest wines,
agree.
while we out here struggling, scraping. That's another thing that bugs me. How come black men's lives only matter after we're dead?
That's right. That's
I
right.
tried to approach Teresa Rayford about that yesterday when they were protesting, and they said, well, you know, we have a right to, what's the word in the Constitution, a right to voice and to speech.
Oh, yeah. First
I
Amendment.
said, yeah, and I said, we also have a right to life and the pursuit of happiness.
Right.
Don't wait till we're dead to tell me I got a right to the pursuit of happiness
right.
or a right to life.
Right,
Dead men can't do nothing.
Right.
What we should be trying to do, and this is one thing I want to talk to you, Mayor Wheeler, about, is the economics of racism.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Let's analyze what the economics of racism
Okay,
looks like
okay.
and why it is so profoundly affects the function of the black family
That's right.
unit.
That's right.
I'm going back to where we first went, when you talk about justice, and when I read the Old Testament, also known as the Torah, one of the things that the Judeo-Jewish tradition profoundly and advocates for is justice for the people.
I like that. Yeah.
Not those who are the power brokers, the civil servants, the guys that's run around City Hall with $1,500 suits and $600 shoes, but like you said, the average Joe
Yeah.
that's trying to put bread on the table
Yeah.
for his family
Yeah.
without going to jail.
To eat.
Without going to jail.
Right.
Because I've worked with some of these young men that are exceptionally talented. I told you about the young man that's an actor and
Right.
got the gold records.
Right.
Why would you want him flipping hamburgers
Right.
at 28 years old
Right.
because you want to feel good about your
Right.
white femininity
Right.
all the time screaming Black
Right,
Lives
right,
Matter?
right.
What matters is before he dies.
Right.
Give that kid a chance.
Right.
Let him be an entrepreneur. Let him make some money
Right.
as a decent, God-fearing, taxpaying
So he can
citizen.
take care of his family.
Right. Without the threat of going to jail.
Exactly.
That's all I'm saying.
Exactly. Exactly. Oh, wow. Well, look here, I'll
Okay,
tell you
well,
what
brother,
I'm gonna do.
Brother
what's going
Bruce
on?
Broussard, I greatly appreciate you coming
Thank
on
you,
the
sir.
show
Thank you
today.
very much.
And I thank all you people out there in TV land for enjoying and appreciating Brother Bruce Broussard. And I thank you, my brother, because you was here today and very informational. And I'm going to have you finish your show up with speak
keep
about
talking.
whatever subject you want to choose to speak on.
Okay.
And please come back again, Brother Bruce
Hey,
Broussard.
I'm going to
Thanks for
educate.
inviting me.
I'm going to educate some
Okay.
folks about
Okay.
homelessness.
Okay.
And he's going to do that on his show.
Okay.
And it starts at 4 o'clock, right?
4 o'clock.
Okay,
What
on
is
Channel
that?
11. Okay.
Channel 11.
Okay. All
Channel
right.
11. So
All right.
we'll still be moving forward. And my
How
brother.
much time do I have? to
Okay,
talk?
we have another half an hour.
Oh, just to talk?
Yes, is that okay with you?
That'll work for me.
Okay, well,
Okay.
you just do your thing, and Danny Bell, you just do what you need to do.
Okay.
I'm gonna leave the show. I'm gonna turn it over to you.
All right.
And let the chips fall where they may, because you're speaking from the heart, and he's telling you people out there in TV land like it is. So just let him have it.
Okay.
Okay, my brother,
Well,
please.
thank you, Cecil.
You're very welcome. I'm very happy you're here
Well,
today.
this first of all, I'd like to thank all you viewers for watching and taking the time to listen to my point of view. What really compels me and what I'm really concerned about is the black man's place in America, in his family unit, and what we as Americans, how we're going to address the malady of and the cancer of racism as a problem. And part of this, did you see that phone number up there, Danny Bell, 503-810-4354? Please call me and let me have some ideas. Just kind of caught me aback, but I would like to finish the thread about Portland, Oregon. Has a long history dating back to Mother Jones in the 1800s of a feminist liberation movement and the vote for the female, which I think was in 1920 or so with the 18th, 19th Amendment around in there. And part of the equation, part of the problem is we have a conflicting vis-a-vis relationship. And long as we have an adversarial relationship between the sexes of any race, and either sex is trying to accumulate and consolidate power, the ability and the opportunity for cooperation will be in direct ratio to those who want to seize that power. So, what does it look like to move forward on common ground in terms of the humankind family? And some of my ideas, these aren't original ideas, some of these ideas from conversations I've had with scholars, I've had with intellectuals, I've had just with people on the street, is that we're going to have to set aside some of our biases and prejudices and look for what's the greater good for humanity. America holds the promise of all the world in terms of self-determination, in terms of prosperity, and in terms of just personal liberation. Right now, we are at a very critical juncture in the direction America wants to take. We've just had a president, a biracial president, who preferred to be identified as black, much to the chagrin of many mothers of biracial children. And now we have a president who is, for all outside appearances, a misogynist, a person who has a very poor opinion of women and the female sex. At some point, we're going to have to sort out our priorities. When I was in Chicago and they had several forums on the hip hop, there was one young man who was a hip hop artist. He worked with Jay-Z, Kanye West. I can't recall his name right now. And Rhymefest was his name. He ran for City Hall too. And he said that movements need two things. They need a rallying cry, which is your song, and they need to generate from a neighborhood. They need to generate from one positive place where the individuals in that neighborhood had a greater vision than their immediate needs. So part of those equations, when you look at it as a syllogism, what would the equation look like? Part of it is, Bruce would say, eating. Well, as most of you who are informed know, if you got $5 in your pocket, a bank account, a roof over your head, clothes on your back, you're better off than 6.7 billion people on the planet. So that's one element of the equation, is just basic, meager survival. What does that look like? The other component is something embedded in our preamble to the Constitution, which is the pursuit of happiness, life, and liberty. That is developed out of a lens of the 1700s. Thomas Jefferson was the primary writer of that document. And at that time, around the planet, slavery was pretty much accepted. Asia, Africa, even in Africa today, slavery is an activity that is very common. You'll find it in Somalia, you find it in Sudan, and you'll find it in Nigeria. Nigeria is supposed to be the most prosperous city in Africa, yet you have Boko Haram. So this is quite a challenge. It's quite a challenge to ask ego-driven personalities, which all politicians are. Politicians want to leave a legacy, they want to consolidate power, they want to make a difference. Those take tremendous egos. Just like writing takes a tremendous ego. We feel we have something to say. But in the middle of all this, it's called the common ground, where everyday people live. Joe and Jane, your next door neighbor, the kids down the street and their parents. They're all involved in this act of human activity called society. I was reading about the young man that killed those people in South Carolina, I believe it was. And his parents had bought him a gun. Guns of that nature usually run $300 or $400. And I don't believe he learned his intense racism just by playing with his playmates. That's something that was inculcated to him within his immediate family unit, something that is the family taught him that these are the merits and these are your priorities. And somehow he got a skewed vision that he was going to start a race war or contribute to starting a race war. One, general public, the next Civil War will not be fought at Valley Forge or what's the other one? Anybody's farm field. The next Civil War will be fought in the heart of the cities where most people live. It will tear this country asunder and apart. And if we don't do something at the highest level, that's the track we're on. And all the recriminations and all the saying I'm sorry's, it took 150 some odd years to get to where we are now. So you can only imagine in the 21st century if we tear up our infrastructure fighting one another over race. And race is a real component. People in sociology are of a mind that race does not exist. Any forensics anthropologist can look at somebody's skeleton and remains and tell you if they are Asian, African, or Caucasian, and to a large degree, what different, if they're mixed, what elements of them are part Asian or part European. So race is a very real thing, and it goes to the marrow of our bone. So that brings us back to some real fundamentals. When you have politicians who function on the premise that you have to have a critical mass before you respond to their humanity, you got a problem. We have a problem right here. I've told Mayor Wheeler to his face, I've told his staff when we were discussing the dearth of representation of blacks in the police department. And I told him and Maurice, you guys not only have a problem with just a few people in the police department, you have a problem of an exodus of blacks leaving the city. And that contributes to the fabric of the culture. So then it puts the onus on, what are the priorities of City Hall? What are the priorities of Multnomah County? What are the priorities of the state legislature? Is it going to be a historical a response like Kipps Harbor and so many before them that we love you people, we just can't feel you, and we just can't reach you, and we have our own Negroes, and those Negroes who we've already vetted, such as Roy J., who's now in disgrace, those are the Negroes that we're going to support, and we're going to designate those good Negroes to represent the rest of the black community. And then you have the sycophants. You have the people that used to work down at the convention center making $16, $20, $30 an hour with an excellent benefit package because of Roy J., because of Bernie Foster. You can't fault them. But there is a paper called the Federalist Paper, which was very instrumental in the 13 colonies becoming the United States. And in that book, it says that even evil men will do good deeds to accomplish a goal of achieving and consolidating power. So I rest my case. If we are always going to capitulate and let the other guy represent our interests, we're going to get what we got. Only 30% of the people, including me, voted for the school board. The school board has become such an important political component that they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to get elected to that position. There are less children going to school in the city of Portland in 2017 than when I was a child in kindergarten in 1955. I've heard that's cyclical. The problem is Portland, Oregon has over 200,000 more residents now than it did in 1955. It doesn't pencil out. You can't have 200,000 more residents, but you lose X amount of students. What that indicates is that the residents that are moving here are not residents with families, they're residents without kids. That changes the whole complexion of the city. It changes the priorities of the cities. Now, we hear a lot about supporting this school funding and that school funding. We need to go back to the fundamentals and support the families and make this place more attractive to families instead of pushing an agenda which forces families out and is essentially only adult friendly. So that ties in again with what Bruce was talking about, education and informing people. One of the problems with education and informing people is people see things through their own private lens. So if you only seek out information that reaffirms the position that you already have adopted, there's no growth and there's no enlarging the base of opportunities for others, because the only people benefiting will be the only people fitting into that small criteria that has been forced upon them. And that leaves a lot of people with talent and human capital out because they don't fit the profile. I took some training from the Multnomah County Capacitation Center, and I was asked to leave that training the first day because I asked the question. The question I asked is, how come all this training is slanted toward women's issues? Men are bad, capitalism's bad, and it's kind of like we're biting the hand that feeds us. There was no middle ground, there was no compromise. Everything was through the lens of South America. First of all, South America is a Hispanic culture. America is a Celtic, North American, English culture. We're talking apples and oranges here. Much different than the Latino, Indian, indigenous culture. So we're talking cross references of values, what the South Americans value, what the mestizos value, what the Latinos values, and Latinos values is somewhat different from what the English value, what King George, who was German, values, and the whole arc of this relationship between America and England is very similar to the Greco-Roman relationship of culture and civilization. So that's another thing that has been kind of secreted in the leftist movement. And another thing about the leftist movement, they are, I guess, very hostile and fearful of admitting vulnerability. I got into something with a very prominent activist, her name is Kathleen Sadat, and she said I said some hurtful things. I guess it was so hurtful that we can't reconcile this, and forgiveness is a 4-letter word in the leftist movement. Those types of things are absent, and when the element of forgiveness is absent, when it's always the other guy's fault, when you're always on the attack, it becomes a war. And in the war, they don't very rarely take hostages. They usually kill the enemy, and then they move on to the next conquest. So we might be out here isolated in Portland, Oregon, but it's a very interesting social justice laboratory because we're so isolated that we can understand and distill some of these human behaviors and activities without polluting them, say from Seattle, the culture in Seattle, or the culture in San Francisco or Denver or even Las Vegas. And it's very telling on this arc because outside of these oases of feminist politics, you'll find it's very masculine, Chicago, Oakland, those types of places. Some of this rhetoric, some of the challenges to masculinity would be met with very harsh consequences. Okay, so I think in wrapping this up, I would like to make an appeal to all my friends in the left, all my homosexual friends, all my gay friends, and transgender friends, that all men are not the enemy. There are men of integrity. In fact, that's how women became attached to the civil rights legislation of 1965, was that white men, for the first time in the history of America, voted against their interests and included women in the Civil Rights Act. So there are some men that are understanding, but to assign blame and to treat us with a broad brush, as the article in the Portland PDX Queer magazine said, heterosexual normative males are the enemy is to invite a war you cannot win. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Mhm.
And you're welcome to come back in the future. And if you want to come back with Brother Bruce Broussard, you're welcome to do so. Or just come back on your own and bring whatever message you want to bring to the public. I do an hour show every Sunday.
Okay.
And I look forward to
Believe it or not, I've been following you for years.
Oh, well, amen. So whatever's on your heart and mind, and if you got a message you want to get out there,
Okay.
and if you got someone else you want to bring with you to convey the message,
Okay.
they're welcome to come as well. So
Well, thank
it's whatever you want to do. And I say to all you people out there in TV land, in God Almighty we trust, and and God Almighty love you, and I love you too. And I just want you to stay strong, stay focused, and play to win. And that's what it's all about. I think you did a dynamic show with Brother Bruce Broussard, and you presented yourself very well in getting your message across just now. And so I'm very happy for you. And if you had more to say, then bring it with you next time when you come. If you're welcome to come, the invite is always there. Okay.
Thanks a lot. Well, I've lived here all my life. I don't plan on going nowhere anytime soon.
All right.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks
Well,
a lot.
I'm gonna let these people. I think I have 2 more minutes left, and I'll be off the air. But this was Danny Bell, and he's been some everywhere and did some of everything. And you were very informational, Brother Bell.
Thank
and I
you.
greatly appreciate that. And I have someone in here to give me a finger sign of
You just gave
how
me
much
2
time we
minutes.
have
We
left.
got
2
less than
minutes?
2 minutes.
We have, okay. So go ahead and use the last 2 minutes.
Okay. Well, the last thing I'd like to say is that I try to live for the glory of God. Jesus Christ is my leader, and that I'm offering an olive branch for all those who felt harm and hurt, that I would like to open a dialogue so we can contribute all to the greater good of our community. Many people call Portland, Oregon a paradise. And from my travels and what I've seen, this is about as close as you're going to get. It's not a tropic paradise, it's a rainforest paradise. But where else in the world can you be 5 hours from a desert, 2.5 hours from an ocean? They got some beautiful rainforests all up and down this region. And indeed, this is God's country. May God bless you and keep you all. And I look forward to hearing from you out there in the general public.
Okay, thank you again. And he had gave you his phone number over the air. And in the future, I allow people to call in and do call-in calls. And this phone number, they will be able to call you on your telephone.
Yeah,
and I look forward to that. But,
okay.
That we'll get all that done. So if you got questions you want to ask or criticisms that you want to make, it doesn't make us no difference. It's just, you're welcome. Hope for Community for Justice is what this show is all about. I'm waiting for the credits to start rolling, so I think we're just about out because we have about 1 minute.
You got about 60 seconds.
Okay.
Okay, man. That's looking good.
Okay. Thank you very much.